You're listening to Inside the Notes. I'm your host, Erika Block. Here we have the opportunity to listen to the stories that connect our musical family tree. First-hand accounts of performances, musicians, and mentors that shape the way we listen, learn, and teach. On today's episode, we are chatting with Italian pianist Roberto Plano, associate professor at Indiana University. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So Roberto is in Bellingham this weekend giving a recital at Western Washington University's Sanford Hill Piano Series. Was this program one that you have played many times in its entirety, or were you mixing pieces?
It's mixing pieces. I actually played the Rhapsody already here in a house concert in Bellingham, which eventually led to this public concert. So I wanted to repeat that, but at the same time I wanted to do new things as well. Mm-hmm. So the whole first part was new, and I always try to mix things that I know more and things that are newer. Mm-hmm. And I always try to make programs that in some way make sense.
Right.
And I always try to build a story within the program. Mm-hmm. So the first half was mainly conceived around the Romanticism and post-Romanticism in Europe.
Right.
So I had an Italian Respighi, mm-hmm. A Hungarian with Liszt, and then a Russian with Scriabin. And then the second half, we left Europe. We went to South America first, mm-hmm. with Argentinian and Brazilian composers, Ginastera and Villa-Lobos, and then Gershwin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I loved the Ginastera. I didn't know that piece at all. Incredible.
Yeah.
And I love the juxtaposition of the really calm, like completely serene movements. And
dance and then the crazy. Yeah, it's the way the music is built.
It's
amazing. Very. It's great.
And such a great opportunity for incredible dynamics.
Yeah. The Ginastera wrote that piece while he was studying with Copland in Tanglewood, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So you can hear influences of South America, but at the same time influences of modern music, rhythmic music, of course. Mm-hmm. It's very, very nice.
Mm-hmm. And then the Gershwin, so he transcribed that.
So that's the transcription that he made. But the one that he made is kind of the basic things, and I missed the orchestra, and I played that piece with the orchestra many times. Mm-hmm. So I tried to improvise a little bit and add things, instruments and everything, glissandos, little dirty notes here and there, to emulate a little bit the instruments of the orchestra. Yeah.
And it's really fun. I mean, it seems like it's 1,000 times more work to play the entire piece.
Yes, of course. It's much easier with the orchestra, yes.
Absolutely.
But it's more fun, I think, with just the piano. It's more rewarding because you don't have to do everything.
Absolutely. And then the first encore, I couldn't hear from the stage what it was.
Yeah, so it's called Piano Play by Friedrich Gulda. It's a crazy, wild piece that people love as an encore, so I usually do that.
It was amazing.
It's a showy piece.
Is it just a standalone piece?
So it comes from a collection called it's a set called Play Piano Play, and that's number 6. And also there's some little space for improvisation, so I changed a little bit of things in the score. But it's fun.
It's really fun, and it's got so much energy. It's fun to watch the audience just explode out of their seat
after that. Yeah,
it's great. Yeah. And that's a really heavy program.
Yeah.
So what is when you're compiling and deciding you've got your story and you know what you want to play, how do you work on the memorization and also the energy that you're going to need to expel as you go down?
Yeah, this is something that you learned. You learn on the road. Mm-hmm. I remember when I started doing recitals, at the end I was completely destroyed. Same thing with the orchestra, like third movement, I was playing with the orchestra, I was done. But you learn how to try to save some energies for the end. Mm-hmm. And of course, usually you try to put the final piece in the program should be something that people could remember easily. Mm-hmm. So I think the Gershwin was a great ending, and then the first encore also. But then at the end I wanted to leave them with poetry rather than show.
Yes.
And so that's why I decided to do a second encore, which was on the slow side.
Yes.
And I felt that it was more poetic, which is actually what I feel the most.
And I love that thought because it kind of brings the room back
Everything
together.
back down.
And you can, it's reflected in the applause.
Yeah.
You kind of calmed everyone down.
Yeah.
They're able to drive safely.
Exactly.
Like, after being so energized.
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so when you have big pieces like that, do you feel like as you're going out on stage, are you only thinking about the one that you're in, or it's just so many notes?
Well,
as a clarinet player, that's an overwhelming amount of notes.
Yes.
So how do you
we do have many notes.
kind of deal with each section of your recital and how your story connects?
Sure. Well, first of all, for me, it's always like climbing different mountains, and it's like in a mountain range. There are some mountains that are not as high, and some of them are very high, and you know this from the beginning of the program, and you know where things can go smoothly, and you can like put the automatic pilot, and it just goes by itself, and you can really absorb every energy that comes from the piano and enjoy it. And there are mountains that need a little bit of help, so it needs more direction, more you have to be more careful while you play it, because it could be out of tracks easily.
Right. You gotta maintain steering the ship.
Exactly. At the same time, of course, you don't have to do only that, but you have to pretend. I mean, the people have to pretend that there's no change in you.
Right.
So they don't know about this.
Right.
You are the only one that knows how difficult a piece can be for you, or how easy can be another piece.
Right.
And usually when you program, it's a combination of those.
Right. Pushing yourself. And
at the same time, sometimes resting. So I think yesterday's program is a blend of all this. It's a mixed feeling every time. The piece that I love the most is the List, I have to say, which is the most unbelievable spacious music that I know. And yesterday I felt incredibly free to do pretty much whatever I wanted, because people were listening to me.
Yes.
Even if it's like that one in particular, because it's 17 minutes piece, very, very quiet, mainly. But I felt that there was silence in the room, which is the greatest compliment that an audience can do.
Yes, and I think you really did have everyone's attention. And so that's a perfect kind of next question is, I'm always fascinated by people's journey on how they get to that peak performance is kind of the best word I can think of, where it's almost the out-of-body experience where, yes, there's work to be done and there's notes, but where you're truly connected. Is that something, and with nerves and all of the other things, is that I felt that you had that through the roof last night. It was so connected with the audience, and the audience was holding their breath. How has that journey been for you? Has it been?
Well, it's a discovery. I would say every time that I play, it's a new discovery. I have to say, when I was. So first of all, I'm always nervous. This doesn't. I always tell my students, if you believe to people that tells you, no, I don't care when I go on stage, I cannot believe that.
No, I agree.
So it's not possible.
Impossible.
And if it helps, I mean, if it happens, I don't know how much the connection will be of the artist, because if it doesn't feel something inside, maybe it's hard to deliver that. Yeah. So, but I have to say, when I was like in my 20s and I was feeling this pressure every time, I was telling myself, well, I hope so much. I mean, I can't wait to be 40 when I will be finally free on stage, completely free of fear, of nervousness and everything, and so that I will be able just to enjoy it. Well, I'm 40 now and it doesn't happen. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty much the whole thing again. And every time you try to reset after a concert and find new energies.
Yes.
The great thing after a recital is I always ask myself how much I was into it. And when the audience allows you this, you're really into it. I mean, yesterday I felt into the music, which is really great. So of course I was nervous as always, but at the same time I was able to deep myself completely into the
and
music.
completely get into it. Yeah, and I think that's one of those struggles, especially for younger players, because they're so hung up on I don't want to make mistakes. I want it to be perfect. I need it to be good.
Yeah.
It's really hard to.
Well, the balance to let you lose and at the same time continue to have a professional control of the performance. That's one of the most difficult things that we learn, right, as performers. But I would say, if there are young musicians there listening, don't get discouraged if you feel that on stage you feel that it's not you were not born to be on stage. It may be just a temporary feeling, and in any case, it's like this for everybody.
Right.
So,
everybody's feeling it, whether or not they admit it.
Oh yeah, whether or not they admit it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this year, is this your first full year at Indiana?
Yeah, I just started in August.
Started.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So now here you are with a full studio.
Yeah.
How do you negotiate concertizing and traveling and then coming home to makeup lessons?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I have to say that I always thought, actually, I lived in Italy until 3 years ago, and I was teaching in the conservatory system there. So I had, it works the same. I had a studio. The only thing is that it's a little bit reduced studio, so it's 12 students in Italy, while now at Indiana I have 18. So it's a full load.
That's a very
big studio. Oh yeah, big studio. Yeah. So in Italy it was a little bit less than that, 12. I actually emigrated because I played a lot in the States. But I felt that I wanted to stay in Europe because I love my country. I love Italy. The problem there is that the conservatory system is still based on a national system, which recruits teachers not really going by merit, but it goes by seniority. So I had to be in this list and wait for my turn. I was always substituting teachers every year because I could not, my age was not in the tenor age.
Right.
So I had to wait for my turn, which actually came this year. But I was too tired. And I wanted to see if I could earn the possibility to be in a great place teaching, which doesn't happen in Italy, because in Italy you don't do any competition to be hired as a professor.
Right.
So it was a challenge. I like challenges like I had challenges when I was competing, even if I felt so much that being nervous in competitions. I knew that it was something that would really give me a prize if I would achieve it and actually work with competition. So I wanted to see if it was the same thing, if I was still good enough to earn something.
Yeah.
And so I did a search when BU had a search post in university, and I won that search. I went there for 2 years. I have to say that I had mixed feelings. So anyway, then I was not sure if I wanted to stay in the States or go back, because I didn't find what I was really expecting.
Right.
In general, I would say, not only that school, but in general. But then this possibility came, and again, I did the search at Indiana. I knew the school because I was giving masterclass there in the summer. I knew about the incredible legacy pianists that I adored, like Jorge Bolet, the Cuban pianist that taught there. Was one of my idols, and colleagues that I have now are, among the most incredible pianists in the world. So I felt actually that it would have been incredible if I would have been hired. I didn't think that I could do that. But again, I like challenges. I tried.
That's awesome.
And I was still assistant position. I had a position as assistant professor in Boston. I was hired as associate in Indiana, which is unbelievable.
Great.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So your whole family moved from Boston to
so we
Indiana?
moved from Boston to Indiana. Yeah.
You're in Bloomington.
And now I'm there.
And Indiana has been a really fun thread throughout this podcast. So
really?
many, almost everybody. right, has somehow
some
touched
connection
or
there.
somehow connected through Indiana. So it's a really fun school to
Well,
see.
yeah, it's funny because every time, for instance, when I tell about this in Italy they don't really know about that school, but in America it has so much legacy.
Yeah.
That it's true. Every time that I speak about the school, oh yes, I went there, or my friend went there, because it's so big as well.
Right, and with people like Janos Starker and those heavy hitters that were there, kind of building the chamber music community.
Exactly.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
So that's a really fun thing to walk into.
Yeah, very much. Very honored to be there.
For you've got 18 students.
I have 18 students.
A mix of performance and music ed? Or
No. It's all performance. Yeah, I have two composers actually, but they are equally good as the performers. So it's a great studio. I have to say, I love my students. It's a great first year.
Yeah.
I love very much the level. One of my students now will be international in the MTNA. He just won state and divisional competition for the MTNA.
Amazing.
So he's going to run for the national competition next March. So it's
fun to watch other people kind of experience some of the things that you have.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would love to talk a little bit about, you were saying some of the competitions. Your breakout competition, it seems like, was the Cleveland.
Yeah, it was Cleveland. Yeah.
What was that experience like? Because I feel like that solo piano competitions are like the ultimate pressure cooker.
Oh yeah.
There's so many amazing people, and the repertoire is so crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
How is it set up? Did you have certain pieces and for levels, rounds?
So first of all, it's interesting to know the story that comes before that competition, because it's crazy. It really sounds crazy. Without that competition, I probably would not be here today. So it's a step after steps. But I was very, very close not to go there. Wow. When I sent the application, I was so at that time we still had audio tapes. So,
way back.
Way back. Even if it doesn't seem so long ago. But actually, so I remember I recorded my audio tape. I sent the application together with the letter and the bio and everything. And then I was waiting for a result and nothing came for the pre-selection. So this was the pre-selection. I applied because Cleveland was paying for the travel and lodging to the ones that were selected. So it was a great possibility for me to explore America for the first time.
Yes.
And unfortunately, or luckily, I don't know. Anyway, when I found out that they didn't write me anything, I was afraid that I would have been rejected. So I wrote them, and to make the long story short, they told me that they never got my application. So it probably was lost in the mail.
Whoa.
And Italian mail, for sure, had that reputation. So, but luckily, since Italian mail had that reputation, I remember I saved the receipt. So I told them, no, I did send everything, but I have my receipt. So could you, even if the deadline was over, could you accept me still? And they said, yes, we will, since you have the receipt, but you have to do again. You have to send everything again, of course. Whoa. So at that time, there was no hard disk. I did a new tape completely from scratch.
Whoa.
So I had to do the new tape, do again the documents. I sent everything via express mail this time. They got it, and then I went and won the competition.
Wow.
So it's crazy, because I probably would have not been there if I hadn't saved the receipt.
And had the forethought to inquire.
Exactly.
Why on earth haven't you called me yet?
So I tell this story to my students usually to let them understand if they really want something. I really wanted to go.
Yeah.
So I made sure that I really had everything so everything all right to go. And then when they told me you have to do the tape again, I didn't feel discouraged.
Right.
But I did it again because I wanted to go and have an experience. And then I went. It was 4 rounds. At that time, Cleveland was 4 rounds, so you're eliminated after like every round. They go down with the numbers.
Does each round have a different work?
Each round had different works, of course, yes. And so after the first one, I was cloud nine, because there was a reviewer that wrote that the competition had found its poet, and I could not believe it. And until then, I never really, I had no experience, so I really didn't feel that I could have gone through second round at the maximum. Wow. But then eventually I went second round as well. Sorry. Third round, I played it, and I have to say I was not so satisfied after it. I felt that I could have been eliminated easily, and then somehow they got me in the finals, even if I didn't think that I had that possibility. And then I played with the orchestra, and then they announced the second prize winner, and it was not me. So it was four of us in the finals. So they announced fourth, third, and then I was really cheering for second, because I was afraid that if I would have won that competition, my life would have changed. And I was not planning that, actually.
Right.
I planned to be in the competition, but I didn't plan to win it. So I was cheering for second, but then they announced second prize, and it was not me.
Incredible.
Yeah, and I have goosebumps every time that I tell that story. I have been back in Cleveland many times, also to judge the competition. So I've been in Severance Hall, and I remember exactly. I showed my colleagues. I remember exactly when that happened and when they announced the name and everything.
That's
remember
amazing.
the line, everything. So yeah,
what was
I was 22 at the time, so yeah.
Wow, and that's such a young launch into the business, really.
Yeah.
What was the orchestral concerto that you had?
The Beethoven Third Piano Concerto.
Wow.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, and it was very nice. So the next day. It was a nightmare.
Phone starts ringing.
So that night, of course, I didn't sleep. I played pool the whole night. There was a pool in the dorm.
That's awesome.
The other candidates, they went out and have fun, but I could not. I could not believe it.
Yeah.
And then the next day, I had the first meetings with the manager and everything. And my English was, it's bad still now, but then it was really bad. I could not speak a word.
That's amazing.
And so I was sitting with my manager, so the new manager that I didn't meet until then, the director of the competition, and then some other people, some press people. And I couldn't even understand what they were talking about.
Right.
So
it's such an overwhelming experience.
Yeah. I still remember that day like one of the most difficult in my life.
Yeah. Because now everyone's ready to hear your
perspective. Exactly, and I didn't even understand what they were talking about, so it was hard. Then after that, I went to Washington right away. So for me, as an Italian, going to Washington, again, for free, everything was paid, and I had already an interview at NPR.
Wow.
And I had to play live at NPR. So basically, from day to night, I had to dive into this.
So did they basically, once you win, they have kind of a tour set up?
Yeah, they have 2 years of setup concerts.
2 years.
Yeah, I did I think about around 55 concerts in 2 years. So I was constantly touring here.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And did they ever plan in time to go home, or were you really just...
So I was trying, they gave me some host families that would take care of me in Cleveland. At the time I was still living with my parents. In Italy, everybody lives with their parents until they get married. Right. So I was still living with them, and but I was traveling so much that I would not go home for months.
That's shocking.
Oh,
it's a shocking
Yeah, it's a shocking
change.
And
also not being comfortable in the language, and it's a whole new country.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's probably a little isolating.
Everything was new. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So difficult time, but exciting at the same time.
Right.
I had to do things that I was dreaming of, like going to like paradises like Key West. I remember one of my first concerts was in Key West. And in order to go to Key West from Florida, some airports in Florida, they put me on a plane. It was like a 2 seats airplane.
Yeah, like a little
I could not believe it. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, I lived adventures that I will never forget.
Right. And that are so closely tied with that one experience.
Oh, yeah.
So it's worth it if you're going to do some work.
Exactly.
You never know where it's going to take you.
Yes. Yeah. So it was great. Yeah.
So what was your early piano life like in Italy? It's such a different system than it is here.
Yeah,
very much. How old were you when you started?
So when I put my hands on a keyboard, I was 3. I was very young. There's still on my website, if people go to my website, on the bio page, I think, there's a picture of me at 3 playing the keyboard. So,
fabulous.
I didn't have music background. My parents are not musicians. I have perfect pitch, so we discovered that later. That helped me to find the tunes. I was spending time on the keyboard all the time, and so my parents saw that and they decided, well, why don't we try with music lessons? They already tried with my brother actually, but the teacher. They saw a teacher and the teacher saw my brother's hands and he said, no, they're too little, too small for piano. And actually he has bigger hands than mine. So they said, even if you have smaller hands, let's try anyway.
Yeah.
Because they understood that something was good with the ear. And so I had my first lessons, and after 6 months, the teacher told my parents that I needed a piano, so that the keyboard was not enough, and also that I needed a better teacher, because she probably understood that I had some gifts. Yeah. And so from there on, everything started, and I started my career.
Did they find
as a student?
Is there, you know how there's a preparatory division here?
So
is it something like that?
So no. Everything is kind of different in Italy, and I have to say this is the best part of us. In the conservatories, we accept younger students, and they all study with the big teachers as well.
Cool.
So I was able to have good teachers already when I was young. I didn't have to feel the stress that I feel that can be here in America between pre-college and college. I didn't feel that separation. You live the college life with all its rules and everything already, starting from a young age. At the same time, you go to school. So and that still exists in Italy, and I think it's still a great advantage that we have.
For sure.
And in fact, there are so many wonderful Italian musicians. Of course, there are so many American musicians, but related, Italy is so small.
Exactly.
So I think the density of musicians that come out of that state is huge.
And having the opportunity to study with the
big
big
ones,
teachers.
yes,
Here, it's so spread out, and there's so many kinds of teachers.
So you can be lucky, and you could be and you could not.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really a little bit of roulette. Whether or not you are. But there, if you're getting the real information right away.
Right away, you're going into the right direction.
Yeah.
So I started there. So I went to the conservatory eventually, and then after that I went to Paris. I studied in Paris for 3 years. I didn't live there. I was commuting because it was too expensive. So also this is also very
that's very European.
Very European. So I was commuting at night. I was sleeping on the train at night to avoid to spend money for the hotel.
Yeah.
I was getting there once a week, spend the whole day in Paris, then going back with the night train.
Wow.
Yeah. Like for 2-3 years. But I won Cleveland exactly around that time.
Wow.
While I was in Paris.
And then off you.
And then after that, I started the performing career mainly. And after, so here actually, it was great also the fact that together with concerts, like in this case, together with concerts, they will ask me to do a masterclass. And at first I was very unexperienced. Well, I will always remember one of my first masterclasses. I heard a student that was playing a Bartok piece. I still remember the piece, Allegro Barbaro, with a big misread in the score. And I was very naive. And I started saying, oh, come on, this is a huge misread. How does your professor allow this? I mean, this is not possible. And then I found out that the professor was in the hall. And so after the professor came to me and he told me, how dare you say those things. And so
you're like,
I learned many things when I started doing
awesome.
Also master classes.
A little bit of the politics behind it all.
Oh yeah, yes.
That's really funny.
So it was very it was a learning experience for me. Absolutely. Also to start to teach.
Absolutely.
And that's how then I went into teaching in Italy, and that gave me a lot of experience.
And master classes are fun too, because you're set there not to dive into their technique, but give them quick things to improve them.
Oh yeah.
So it's a good practice for teaching.
It's a great practice because you have to be so quick and and you have to say something that makes sense.
Right.
Otherwise, the masterclass will be completely useless.
Exactly.
And at the same time, there's audience too, so that you have to make it interesting for them as well. So I think it's
really good practice.
It's an art.
Teaching.
Yes.
I think so. And when it's done well, you get so much as the
feedback.
Listener, even not even playing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's amazing.
So I enjoyed doing that. I was scared at the beginning, but then I really enjoyed doing that. And then the competition life continued. I did Honens, I did Clybourne. All of those competitions gave me exposure. So many concerts. Clybourne was unbelievable for concert in terms of concerts, but Honens too, actually. All of them gave me a lot of possibilities. But the funny thing is that I was really incredible. I mean, mostly successful here in America. I have one prize in Dublin in Europe, but other than that, it's mostly American prizes. So it's probably
that's interesting.
I mean, that's probably why my life went in that direction.
Yeah. So do you, is all of your extended family still in Italy?
So,
You're the only
absolutely.
one.
Yeah,
so
do
you try and go home every summer?
We
or
try,
do you have something?
Of course,
so
we try to go back twice a year at
that's
least.
Good.
Which is not easy as a family of 5. It's very expensive.
It is.
Yeah, but luckily I also still teach in Italy in a private academy, so we always try to find ways, or we have concerts, so we try to attach things together.
Good. I think it's pretty important, especially when you've transplanted yourself away from everything.
Yeah, and especially we emigrated in our 40s. It's not the same like going to a place where you're 20.
Exactly.
So we were really living the life in Italy, and I have to say I miss that. Of course.
Of course, it's so different, and Indiana is so different from Boston.
Very different, and
everywhere else. So you're going into
exactly. So it's a different atmosphere, of course. But the school, I have to say, there I accept it because of the quality of the school.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one thing I would love to ask is, what kind of musical influences did you have when you were growing up? Was there musicians that you loved or recordings that you loved?
Oh, yeah. Well, one of them is Jorge Bolet, the Cuban pianist that was teaching at Indiana. Then I had many others. I had a great Russian pianist, Lazar Berman, who I had lessons with, and I adored his CDs, his list especially. So both of them, Bolet and Berman, I would say their list. But I was really curious. I was listening to any genre of music. I was even playing in a band, the keyboard. So
that's fun.
I was playing pop and blues. I love Blues Brothers, for instance. I was playing a lot of blues just for fun, and I was playing in the church. So many different exposure, different things in my life that I think helped me to not to be. So of course I was focusing on classical music as most as possible, but at the same time I had other interests that gave me the possibility to keep my horizons wide open. I didn't want to be a pianist. I wanted to be a conductor. So I was studying composition to be a conductor, but then the life went on that path, and I followed it.
Wow, that's fascinating. So do you listen to orchestral works? Since that's really where your head was. Do you love to play concerti?
Well, so that's a different story. Okay. Playing concerti for me, it's great. I mean, the first time I played Rock 2, I felt so many goosebumps and everything. At the same time, you have to establish which what I love about chamber music is that you establish a relationship with the other musicians. You cooperate and you do music together. With the orchestra, it's not really like that, because the orchestra expects you to be the soloist.
Right.
So I feel a little bit more intimidated, but mostly I feel that you're not totally free to do whatever you want,
right?
Like in a solo performance,
right?
Or in a chamber music performance where you can talk to each other. You can rehearse for a long time.
Right.
Concerto, you only rehearse once or twice, and that's it.
It's pretty scary.
So
and the orchestra is communicating with themselves.
Yes,
but
so they don't really
separate.
care too much.
Right.
I mean, of course they care, but there's a separation.
Right.
There's a physical separation between the orchestra and the soloist. So that's not what I like the most. I love, though, orchestral works are the one, my favorite ones. And I feel the power of the orchestra. That's why I wanted to be a conductor. And I did do some conducting from the keyboard. I just recently played in Italy with an orchestra, and I was conducting from the keyboard. So it's fun.
So that kind of helps glue you back in a little bit.
Exactly.
And that's very fun.
Yeah.
In Italy, since there is so much music and culture built in automatically, do you find that you are mostly listening to Italian performers and things like that? Were other countries coming on tour?
No. Yeah.
Or is it still the world stage?
Yeah, it's the world stage, I think. Many musicians come there and play. Yeah. There's not too much space, unfortunately, on the media, like radio, TV. There's very, very little classical music, of course, but I think that's everywhere. It's pretty much everywhere. But in terms of live concerts, there are many concerts, and when we get all the big names. So, no, it was great to have live experiences there as well, to see some of the masters coming and play. But I would say I really had my horizons open. So I really tried also with recordings. I had teachers that helped me so much. One of my teachers was so great in giving me cassettes. He would dub cassettes, audio tapes for me, and he would just give me the cassettes saying, listen to this. I mean, this is something
so cool.
Unbelievable. And this helped me a lot. So I will always thank him for this. And then, for instance, we became colleagues with this guy. We were colleagues in Italy. We taught at the same conservatory, so it was fun, and I always thanked him. So I guess you have to be lucky also and find the right people. But at the same time, you have to look for the right people, and you have to. So it's not only being lucky, but you have to find your way.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, because when you're very young, it's hard to know what you need from a teacher per se, or sometimes you don't even realize what kind of teaching works best for you.
Exactly.
So I'm always fascinated when somebody does get a good match, or the teacher really sees something in the student and is able to just grab them and get it going.
Get it going.
And so many performers who've made it to the highest level say, if it weren't for this person,
maybe
they set me up.
Yeah. So I had many teachers. I have to thank each of them for something. Some of them more, some of them less. But I have to say I also never expected something from my teachers. So that's very important, because sometimes I feel that my students are waiting for my inputs and everything, and of course I give them so many inputs, but at the same time I tell them, my teachers, other than this one actually, the other ones never, for instance, never forced me to go to a competition.
Right.
Never told me, why don't you try this? It was always me finding the courage to do it. And I feel there's sometimes not enough courage from the students.
And the self-motivation to say, I really do love this.
Yeah, so I want to try to do whatever I can.
Yes, I think that's a really big one. And it's hard because as the teacher, sometimes if you see it in them, you really want them.
Yeah,
you really want them
course,
to do it. It's really hard to keep your mouth closed and let them go on the journey.
Yeah. So, but of course, I cannot really resist in trying to help them. So I tell them, I help them so much, and then I tell them, but now please try now to feel this.
Yes.
But in any case, it's. I remember the first time one of my first lessons at BU, I had a girl. And like the first two lessons, I was pretty demanding, of course. I was asking her all kinds of things to bring for a next lesson. And then the next lesson she came, so this was probably the third lesson. And she told me, well, I don't know if you're a good match because you're bringing me out of my control zone.
Aha! And you're like, I'm a perfect match.
Well, that's it. That's what I want. So please feel free. Welcome to my studio. If you want that, that's my studio. If you don't want that, my colleagues are wonderful.
Yeah.
Please. And so I told her, And she actually stayed, and then she wrote me a great letter at the end of the semester. So it works. I think it works. In music, we cannot stay in the control zone. It's too easy in a way.
Yeah,
and life is
nothing
not
magical
easy.
is going to happen there.
No.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of my favorite questions to ask every musician is a lot about what we were talking with your recital as far as the energy and the magic in performance. Do you, or can you think about a performance that you were in, chamber music, solo, where you felt like you had really grabbed the audience, or maybe your favorite performance or moment where, especially collaboratively, where you felt like everyone on stage was connectively completely committed, and therefore you know that you had your audience?
Yeah. Well, it's hard. I always try to feel, so maybe that's why I would not know exactly how to reply right now with one case, because I always try to feel after every performance that I do, I always try to feel, well, maybe it was good, so I felt great, but let's not think this was the best. Because I'm always afraid that if I think I reached the best, then I would maybe just relax a little bit. So I always feel that what comes next should be better than the one before. So by saying that, I don't know if I really have one per. I mean, I remember the ones that gave me most goosebumps. So, for instance, the finals in Cleveland, that gave me so many. The debut in New York at Lincoln Center, when I had my, there was a big poster of me. My parents came from Italy for the first time to America just to see me there.
That's amazing.
So that gave me incredible goosebumps, and I will never forget that. My London debut at Wigmore Hall. Well, the first time that I played in the Milan Conservatory in Sala Verdi, which is a big concert hall in the conservatory. I remember when I entered the conservatory, I told my father, who was with me, I will play in that hall soon. And then I did. I won the concerto competition, and I played there. So I remember those clearly. In terms of being the most successful, it comes since I've done so many, and every time, especially when I do chamber music, I feel that there's something going on.
Right.
And I would feel guilty if I would find one of them.
Okay, that's good.
I have to say that.
That's good.
So if I think about the most recent ones, the last time I played with the orchestra in Italy, where I conducted them, I felt a great energy. It was a great chamber orchestra. It's called Milano Classica. They play standing.
Cool.
So it's the new way now of playing. I felt so much energy, even if I'm not really. I don't conduct so often. I felt that they were really into what I was doing. So I really felt that it was a great experience. This last one. In terms of chamber music, I had great. Well, again, I would go with the most recent one.
Yeah.
So when last time I played in a four-hand recital, it was with a colleague. So usually I play with my wife, and of course those are great performances, because you will never feel with a stranger what you feel with somebody that you love so much. So the times when I play with her are just it's just the most natural way to make music with somebody else. And then when our daughters sometimes join us for the anchors, that's just the more fun possible. But this last concert that I did for hands, it was not with my wife, but with a colleague of mine, and Professor Naumov from Indiana. And he, as a child, incredibly young child, was a child prodigy, and he studied with Nadia Boulanger. Wow. And Nadia Boulanger, she taught everybody.
I feel like
everyone.
So
she was the student of Fauré, and so I played with him. I played Fauré,
Awesome.
And it was like playing foray with foray.
Yes.
Because he comes directly from that line.
Yes.
So sometimes you feel this crazy things that give you chills.
Right. And this connectivity, or, somebody whose teacher studied with Brahms who said that you have to do this even though I didn't write it. And it comes down the food chain and you finally hear it. And you're like, we should write this down.
Yes,
Why
yes.
isn't that there?
Yeah.
Put it in the part.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
amazing.
Yeah. So, the music is wonderful because even if those people seem so far away, there's always a connection coming. I studied with a teacher that studied with Arau, and Arau comes directly from Liszt's line.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I think that just kind of understanding that and having the opportunity to think through and listen to what your teacher's lineage is often serves you to an entirely new perspective on whatever the work is.
Sure.
And brings the work to life when all of a sudden it's only 2 generations away from you.
Exactly. Yeah, and you feel it so close to you, and finally you give life, as you said. Yeah, I mean, so many times we feel that music is dead. I mean, we do too.
Yeah.
Or that we're doing something that was so much time ago. But actually, it's not. I mean, Boulanger, I think she died in 76. I would have never thought. I was born in 78.
Right.
So
she
was right
she
there.
Seems like an 1800s
But she seemed like 1800.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, being friend of Ravel, being classmate with Ravel.
Right. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And she really was so influential to so many people.
So many people, especially composers. I mean, American composers. I think Copland studied with her as well.
Yeah, I feel like she set up shop and anybody had to get through her at some point and understand.
Yeah. So it was very, very interesting to feel this Boulanger connection with my colleague in Indiana. And, at IU, I mean, I feel, I mean, my oldest colleague is Professor Presler. And he's 95, and he's the history of chamber music in the world with the Beaux-Arts trio.
Yes.
And he was in my Clyburn jury.
Wow.
And now I'm his colleague, and he asks me when he's out of town to listen to his students. I mean, it's the most incredible thing.
That is incredible.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm sure so fun. I mean, when you're 95, everyone, you've watched everyone grow up.
Of course.
But having you come through and do the competitions, and now here you are years later as a colleague, it must be so fun for them to see, the evolution of these new players.
Probably. Well, it's so, I mean, so much a big honor for me to feel now. I'm not at the same level, of course, but just to feel that on paper we're on the same level, so which is great.
Yeah, and a next level in your teaching life to be associated with such incredible people.
Exactly.
So for my last question, what is something, or kind of, what are your thoughts on new performers as they're coming out? What is the competition circuit like now? What kind of recommendations would you have for people who are finishing up and now what?
Yeah. So that's a very, very interesting question. It's a hard life. What I tell my students, I always felt that they're not ready for what comes next. So when they're in school, it seems like that the school is protecting them.
Yes.
And I felt that when I was in school. But then I had the possibility to go out of school while I was in school. That's what they have to do. Because otherwise you will finish school, you will be out in this world, so hard world, and you would cry if you're not ready before. Very lonely, very, very aggressive, very, very hard to get a position right now because the level is so high. There's not so much space for classical music in the world. The world is more globalized, so everything now is you will be competing with your Asian classmates. So it's really, really helpful for them to understand that they have to feel this as soon as possible. Competition world, I never liked it, but I felt, since I was coming from a non-musical family, that this was probably the only way I had to make myself known.
Right.
And so I'm a product of that, and so I encourage them to do. And there's so many now little competitions where maybe you send your video, so you don't even have to travel.
Right.
They're useless because they won't give you a career, but they can open some doors For instance, if you win one of those, you can add something into your bio,
Right.
and maybe when you do a pre-selection for a bigger competition, they would see that, they would see that you're committed, and maybe you would get in.
Right.
Right now, it's hard to get in the major competitions. Very hard to
Because the
participate.
pre-selection is bad
because
enough.
of the pre-selection.
Yeah.
So, but what I tell my students, you have to be there once in your life. You have to try it. Feel the experience. You will not advance. It's okay.
Yeah.
But feel it. And so you have to find ways to get there. And so my advice is to really go beyond the limit that you have, and always feel that there's no limits.
Yeah.
Limits are something that we put up.
Yeah. And just really do go for it and try it all.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
This has
welcome.
been such a fabulous time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Thanks for listening to Inside the Notes. I'm your host, Erika Block. Be sure to check the Inside the Notes Facebook page for details on our next guest.